yet. We're recording. There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to. We thought we'd do it this way. So this will be, if you are listening to this as an MP3 that I put out on Patreon, just know there is video to go along with it where you can see my beautiful face and Dave. So he is there.
Right. Hello, Dave.
So, there you go. So if you are just listening, do know that if you go to the Patreon page, there'll be a link to a YouTube, which is, it's basically private for people with the link. So, and if you want to share the link, we're not going to get very cross, but other patrons who actually pay might get a bit cross. So be what's the word? Prudent in the way you share this. But if you know of somebody who really wants an answer to a question, do this. We're not that fast. We do this for the love, don't we, Dave?
Well, some of us, because I mean, just before we started recording this, you were saying how apparently the most popular thing is when you annoy me, and you started off with "I look great" and here's Dave. So presumably you've already given the people what they want within the first 30 seconds. So I'm not sure why my opinion matters, or as I'm angry.
I'm a people pleaser, Dave. I think our opinion matters.
Yeah, other people pleaser specifically.
But also, it's quite amusing when you are cross. So, But anyway, I will not. I'm going to start with a question about flappy flaps anyway, because we've got this question, which is from Klaus, and I've had to shorten it to fit it on the screen. But Tyrannosaurus Rex versus Quetzalcoatlus scenes in prehistoric planet.
Prehistoric planet.
It's hard reading, isn't it? Since Dave is an expert on both Aristodocids and Tyrannosaurids, I would love to hear his thoughts on that. And because we've got this, I can add it to the stage, and you can see a T-Rex, hopefully, begin to get really annoyed because loads of Quetzalcoatlus are turning up to his carcass, and he's not a happy bunny. Look at him.
Not if you're listening to this on audio only, you're not.
This is true.
This is from the second season, and you've got a pair of Quetzalcoatlus hassling a T-Rex who's trying to eat a sauropod, which I assume is Alamosaurus or something like that. I think it's pretty realistic. I know when it came out, there were comments from various people, including fellow Tyrannosaur workers, just being a bit annoyed and going, why would a skinny 200-kilo animal be able to annoy a 7-ton Tyrannosaur? And the answer is really easily. I mean, if you've watched any videos of, carcass interactions and stuff like this online, I've seen jackals harassing hyena and things like this, and vultures trying to get access to a carcass. And if there's enough of you, and in this case, there is only 2, but they're really quite agile animals, we think, and at least are being shown to be. And Tyrannosaurs are pretty good for their size, but obviously nothing like as agile. Constantly being pecked, or at least the risk of that from behind. And by the time you've turned around, of course, it's not there anymore. And now your behind is facing the other one who's going to do the same thing to you. It gets tiring very, very quickly. And this is how animals gang up and harass much bigger things. And the other thing is, obviously the Tyrannosaur massively outweighs them, but he's got to catch them. And things like this don't get just instantly or even eventually bloody and nasty. Again, I've watched a couple of videos of things like, hyenas harassing a lion, and half a dozen or more, spotted hyena, which are big animals. And you can see them actually engaging, like you see the teeth meet skin and skin pull and all the rest of it. And it is not like lion is just shredded and there's blood everywhere. It's clearly losing, but of course there's risk on both sides, and you are trying to annoy it and antagonize it and chase it off, but you also don't want to get a lion paw around the face. And so these things are really quite bloodless, even when, drawing blood. Obviously, I know that does, but like it's not like great big rips and blood everywhere and all the rest of it. That's not how these things work. And a 2-3 meter long head that can be jammed at really quite high speed with a big spike on the end. Nothing's going to be a fan of that. And so, no, of course, we don't know the actual ins and outs. Do I think it's realistic that 2 animals could harass a Tyrannosaur like that? Yeah, I think they could, particularly if it's actually not that hungry and there was a fair bit of blood on the sand, if it's already got half a dozen big mouthfuls out of that, let it go. Come back later. The thing that I am surprised at is the way that it's actually going, simply because a big carcass like that, lions are not usually that fussed about chasing vultures off, because there is so much food. There is no point expending any energy trying to stop them taking the few bites that they will take. That sauropod is 20 tons plus, maybe 30 tons plus. The Azhdarchids are not going to eat so much that the Tyrannosaurus is not going to feed. I think they'd ignore each other. I think is a more realistic outcome in that exchange. But could they actually harass a Tyrannosaur like that? Yeah, I'm very sure they could.
If anybody has ever tried to eat chips on Brighton Beach, they will know that this is a very realistic situation. That a tiny animal that can't hurt you really is incredibly annoying. And what the Tyrannosaur should have done is taken a bit of the carcass and just gone to the wall, because then they can't circle round. So if you're ever on the beach with a load of seabirds, get you back to the wall, because then they can't harass you as much. That is top tip from my childhood. Okay, so here is question. This one's from Francine. Were there any dinosaurs with forked tongues like snakes or Komodo dragons? And she did say pterosaurs and marine reptiles as well in this.
Yeah.
And can paleontologists determine the probability of this from the fossil record? So is there sort of like a special like throat bone that indicates whether a tongue is forked or not?
Yes. Well, so that you have hyoids. We have hyoids. These are bones that support the base of the tongue, and partly is what allows you to stick your tongue out. They don't tell you the shape of the tongue, so the fossil record itself in this context doesn't really tell you very much, even if you've got hyoids. But the forked tongues do show up in a bunch of lizards and a bunch of snakes. Not all lizards. You've got various things like skinks and geckos don't have it. But where it does show up is very much in the squamate. So that is lizards and snakes. Snakes effectively are a branch of lizards in that context. But crocodiles don't have it and birds don't have it. So we're back to our extant phylogenetic bracket. So we wouldn't expect dinosaurs or pterosaurs to have forked tongues. None of their ancestors do. None of their descendants do. There's no reason to think that they did in particular. And forked tongues are not that common. If they were super, super common everywhere in biology, you'd go, oh, well, that would make a lot of sense. And maybe crocs are just a bit weird or birds are just a bit weird. But actually, they're not. They're fairly specialist. So dinosaurs no, pterosaurs no. Marine reptiles. Well, mosasaurs at least are ultimately derived from lizards. And not only that, I can never remember. This is one of those things where a bunch of people said yes, then a bunch of people said no, then some people said yes, then some people said no again. And I can't remember which way consensus has swung. I think it's currently in the no, but for a long time, certainly, there was a lot of support for the idea that mosasaurs had evolved directly from varanids. That is the monitor lizards, which obviously include things like Komodo dragons. But even if they haven't, and I used to say, the top of my head, I don't think they are. I think that they're close relatives, but not actually true varanids. All of those lizards are forked tongue types. So there is every reason to think that they would have it in this group. The other reason that you can hint toward that, at least, is the reason they have these forked tongues is they're smelling a lot with them. And so the reason it's forked is it now gives you a left and right, because they're basically picking up scent particles in the air. And so, of course, you would like to have some direction from this. So if you stick your forked tongue out and then bring it back into your mouth to effectively smell from it by tasting the smell, you can tell, oh, well, there's more scent on my left than on my right. The smell's coming from that side. I can go that way, or the smell is coming from over there. And the way they do this is the tongue comes back into the mouth, and then it is pushed up into the roof of the mouth, where there's basically a cavity, and then each bit of the fork can push into a different thing. And I don't know my varanid anatomy well enough, but I think they have basically a groove or a hole in the palate to accommodate this. Now, there's all kinds of holes and grooves in the palate already, but I think this is distinguishable in those animals, if I remember correctly. So that would further support it. I don't think just looking at the palate of a mosasaur, you'd have gone, oh, it must have had a forked tongue because it's got a pair of grooves in the right place. But when we know what their ancestry is, suddenly it all lines up quite nicely.
And do you think that these are mainly used for either food, or are they used for mating? Is this a way that you find females or males?
It's just a way of finding things. Smell is really useful. More, taste only works if it's in your mouth. Hearing and sight only work basically instantly. Smell is kind of unique in that it persists. You can make, as an animal, particularly, okay, this isn't going to be affecting mosasaurs, but, think of things like scent marking. An animal can deposit a scent, and that can linger for days or weeks in a way that a call to say, this is my territory, leave, that works if you can hear it at the moment that you made it and at no other time. This can work for ages, and of course carry a distance and do all kinds of other things. So smell is really very cool in that regard as a sense, and I think we underrate it as humans because our sense of smell is basically a bit rubbish.
I mean, is it a case that animals, because presumably, obviously, underwater, you're not going to be able to mark a territory, are you?
No, so I'm not saying they're using it for anything like that, but like smell is going to be important for finding lots of things. And of course, it can just be ancestral. If all your ancestors had this, you're probably not going to get rid of it without good reason. Selection will get rid of things that don't work and they will enhance things that do work. But if it doesn't actually make a lot of difference either way, it probably won't change very much. And so this could just be a case where it's largely under neutral selection. But don't forget, they will be able to smell things on currents. We talk about sharks having this amazing sense of smell for detecting blood in the water. Well, that's the same thing. It's just that rather than going up the nose, they're picking that stuff up on their tongue first. That's all that's really happening here. So absolutely finding fish or a big dead body or lots of other things that it might want to go and eat, smells will carry in the water.
I suppose in my head, I also thought that maybe it's a temperature thing as well, because, obviously, if you've got silty water from the rivers coming down into the sea, that's going to be warmer water than there's, the actual ocean as well. And maybe that's where
I don't think you need to taste that, though. I mean, we expect them to have
true.
Just
have skin.
Just generally in the skin, yeah.
Yeah. Although don't sharks have like taste buds all over them? Is that not right?
Well, they've got their
teeth all over.
They've got their ampelli of Lorenzini, which are their electroreception system. Their skin is fundamentally made of teeth, which is where we think teeth came from for us.
So weird.
Is the skin of ancestral, not sharks, but the ancestors of these things having enameloid scales on, and they just basically just pulled into the mouth and turned into teeth. We're getting off topic, to say the least.
It's interesting.
Sharks do not have scent receptors in their skin, to my knowledge.
Okay.
But they do have a modified version of the lateral line system, which fish have, which detect pressure, when sharks can also do electroreception. Well, not just sharks, skates, rays, and chimeras, the whole of the elasmobranch cartilaginous fish group that aren't.
I mean,
really
did you see that news article about that ray that got pregnant possibly by a shark in a tank?
I suspect it's just going to be parthenogenic because there's loads of things that are parthenogenic at this point. But as I was chatting to a friend of mine who is a real fish expert, and as we said, stranger things have happened. There was that. What was it? A gar that reproduced with a paddlefish a couple of years ago, which is like as far apart on the evolutionary tree of fish.
That's like a goldfish and a tuna. That is.
Yeah, I mean more. It's This is like humans and kangaroos, or whales and platypus. It is just so far across the tree, and the 300 million year of evolution separation, and they hybridize because biology's weird, and this is why it's hard to define species.
It's almost as species aren't really a thing, but okay.
It's life's a horrible continuum that we attempt to put limits on, and that makes it complicated.
Talking of life being a horrible...
Anyway.
Talking of life being a horrible continuum, that links to our next question. Lovely. So Jay wants to know what Dave is working on that he can talk about this year. And what does he think will be the big things for papers this year? And what's a cool paleontologist is looking at? Obviously what you're allowed to say and not. Do you know what you're working on? Presumably you do.
So, yeah, I do. So I've got a pterosaur paper on Rhamphorhynchus yet again that should get over the line shortly, so I don't mind mentioning it, even though I've kept it quiet so far. We got really minor reviews and I'm basically waiting on my colleague to do the work he said he'd do 2 weeks ago, and then we can send it back. It took like an afternoon to fix the correction. So I mean, this is a sail through review, second time. So that one I don't mind talking about. And that's a thing on intra-specific variation, which is basically just kind of using as a marker for assessing other things. Because as we talked about before here many, many times, you've got this problem where, okay, we've seen it. It's come back yet again with inverted commas Nanotyrannus and this new T-Rex or Tyrannosaurus species, Macraensis. Well, what's the variation like? Because if you're saying this one's different to them, what's normal variation? Because if you don't know the difference between, small women and big men, and one's from that population, one's from this population, it's hard to say how something is different enough that it's worth saying is a new species, or big enough that we should call it an adult. And Rhamphorhynchus, we've got a data set of like 160 animals. So you can do this, except no one's ever done it. So we're going to do it. Look at what the range of variation actually is, and therefore what may or may not sit outside of this. So yeah,
I just found a picture of a Rhamphorhynchus so that people know
to show what it looks like.
So weird.
So yeah, long-tailed, long beak, but with lots of teeth and up to about 2 meters in wingspan, but most of them are about a meter. So that I'm working on. I've got a Spinosaurus project, which I wouldn't normally talk about, but we did present it at SVP, Society of Vertebrate Paleontology conference. I don't think we put a don't tweet about it on social media warning, but equally I haven't tweeted about it on social media, and nor have any of my colleagues. So I'll tell you we're working on it. That's about as far as we'll go. So looking at the teeth and the structure of the jaws and how that might relate to diet. And actually we got the last results through last week or the week before, and they were actually rather more interesting than I think we thought they were, certainly than I thought they were before our final analyses. So we had a bunch of them, but obviously we've updated them and added some more stuff in, and then some more results go, oh, that's quite nice. That paper's not even written yet, let alone submitted. So, I mean, it's nearly written, but we're editing it. I would hope that would be out this year, but I don't know when. Of greater notice, I am literally working today, and I should finish tomorrow or the day after, the final inverted commas, please God let it be the final inverted commas, proofs on my next book, because I'm desperate to wash my hands of it at this point.
I know the feeling. I handed one in on Monday. It's not fun.
Yes. What do I think the big paper this year will be? No idea. What are cool paleontologists looking at? I've just told you. I mean that I don't do it often. I'm allowed the occasional one.
That's what I just understand. It's being a bit like the tallest dwarf, isn't it? The coolest paleontologist. So.
I know I've heard this from multiple different sources. I may have told this story before. I was once voted the most normal paleontologist by other paleontologists at a conference, which again, is like, technically I'm quite glad, but that really is shallowest pothole award. It's the.
When Dave was a youth, he took me to his bedroom to show me his whip scorpion. Which is about as well,
I had normal scorpions as well. Let's be clear, it wasn't just the whip scorpion.
You did. The whip scorpion was the sort one. Yeah. I mean, I hadn't seen one before. I didn't know they existed, which is pretty cool. Anyway, point is,
I have not aged.
You're a certain type of person, Dave, and normal is not necessarily.
But kind of going back to the question, I mostly don't know what a lot of people are working on. Like, we had a new ankylosaur come out yesterday by my friend Jordan Mallon, who I know very well and talk to regularly about each other's work, and I had no idea he was working on a new ankylosaur. So, it's not that we're necessarily super secretive, but I've got a list of about like 20-25 projects on my wall that are somewhere between I'd like to start that in the next 6 months and why has this not been finished yet? God, this should have been done years ago. I'm the same as all my other colleagues. We've all got dozens of projects on the go in various different states at any one time. So no, I can't possibly keep track of who the hell's doing everything, even if they told me. And so sometimes people have told you in depth about a project and then it never appears. or you get an email going, keep an eye out tomorrow, and some massive thing drops that blows everyone away, even from your closest collaborators and allies. So I don't know. I don't know. Or alternatively, people have presented it. We talked about the 200 years at the NHM. There was some really, this is proper exciting stuff. And they said, please don't tell anyone. This is for the community only, and I don't want to tell anyone. So I know, but I'm not going to tell you. So
me, Dave, I'm safe.
Right.
I'm not a very good liar, am I? So that's loads. That's really cool. I'm particularly looking forward to the Spinosauri with their ET crunchy things. That'd be good. I'm looking forward to that. Right. So next question, which I was surprised we haven't actually covered. But were there dinosaurs in the Middle East? This is from Mo. I mean, he says /were there, and I think that there are birds in the Middle East. So
yes, yes, absolutely, definitely. It would be insane if there weren't, in the sense that we've got them in the Arctic, we've got them in the desert, we've got them in the rainforest, we've got them in mountains. They are going to be in the Middle East. They're going to turn up. We've got them in Antarctica, Australia, even places like New Zealand, which has very little rock of the right type to even yield dinosaurs and is very greatly volcanic. And Japan announced they found a tyrannosaur like yesterday. From the one photo they posted of it, I'm not very convinced, but they've got stuff coming out there. There absolutely would have been. It would have had full flourishing faunas for most, if not all, of the Mesozoic. Finding fossils of them, another matter entirely. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I do know a bunch of stuff has come out of the Lebanon that is Mesozoic in age. There's a bunch of Lebanese pterosaurs. They're coming from marine deposits well out to sea, which is why you're going to get pterosaurs and unsurprisingly, specifically fish-eating pterosaurs coming out, but you're probably not going to find dinosaurs. You might, but nothing like the frequency. We talked about stuff like Boreal pallata, that unbelievably good ankylosaur from Canada. That was found well out to sea. They've turned up in those kinds of beds before. So there are going to be fossils of dinosaurs in the Middle East. I'd be amazed if there aren't stuff already, and I just don't know about it, and it's just very fragmentary. It's the odd bit, and so we haven't really been able to do very much with it. There will be dinosaur skeletons. We just haven't done them yet.
I think considering the turmoil of the recent history, it's going to be difficult to actually dig for them.
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's that much rock of the right age exposed at the surface that you can get to. And again, the stuff that there is, certainly the Lebanese stuff, and I know that's not the only one, is marine. So we're going to get marine reptiles, we're going to get pterosaurs, we're going to get fish, we're going to get marine crocs and all kinds of cool stuff. Dinosaurs are going to be very low down on that list. So
fair enough. So one final question here from Pauline, and I had to chop this down a bit, so hopefully it still makes sense. I was wondering why modern dinosaurs make such different sounds. She's been listening to the recent episodes we've done on sound. The quack of a duck versus the song of a thrush. Is this down to environment, and why do some birds have such good mimicry? So is there a certain thing about a duck quack that carries compared to a song thrush, which carries in a different way? Why are they so different?
So the big thing is birds have a very complicated syrinx, which then becomes what's called syringes, the plural. And these are usually really long, and then they allow for greater modification. So the early branching groups, so the ratites, emu, ostrich, kiwi, cassowary, etc., and then the gallo-anseriforms, which basically means chickens and ducks. So waterfowl, landfowl. So geese, swans, ducks, chickens, turkeys, pheasants, partridge, all of that lot basically don't have the really complicated versions of syringes, and therefore usually can't make complicated noises. Because even, things like the cockerel, when we say, it goes cock-a-doodle-doo, and it actually goes, they really don't have a real complicated repertoire.
There's a bird in the west of Ireland. I can't remember what it's called, but it sounds like Velcro. It's hilarious. It's like it looks a little bit like a pheasant. I'll remember its name in a sec.
Nothing that rings off the top of my head. So of course, and then not all birds do. Oh, right. Okay.
I like them because they sound like you're eating cornflakes when you hear them. Like, It's great.
Right.
Sorry.
Not all derived birds have a syrinx, or at least have a complicated one. Crows generally just go kind of core, but those more complicated ones, but those more complicated ones do facilitate more complicated sounds. Specifically, what allows the mimicry, I don't know. I do not know my bird syringes anything like well enough. But yeah, you're right. Ravens, magpies, I think, are very good. Miners, famously, of course, a whole bunch of parrots. And then odd things like, lyrebirds are absolutely amazing at this when their nearest relatives are, I think, bowerbirds and birds of paradise, and they don't do anything other than the odd squawk. So, yeah, some birds are really, really go for it, and a whole bunch of them don't.
I thought it might have something to do with waterfowl make a really noise because it's like it breaks up the water noise and the water sounds too dribbly.
No, I don't think so.
Fair enough. What can I just ask what a syringe is and a syrinx is exactly? What are we talking about?
So it's effectively part of the voice box, inverted commas, as best you can say that.
Is it that thing that they blow in Jurassic Park 3?
No, because that's supposed to be a cast of the palate and the internal sinus space, or at least that's what they imply that it is. So no, it's basically the cartilaginous bit in the throat, which is part of what we have and makes our voice box. Though we have much more complicated stuff going on, which is why we can make loads and loads of sounds that other animals can't. And at least one dinosaur, so there's an ankylosaur found literally like last year. I think the paper, well, not found last year, but the paper was last year. And it's got a partially ossified one because there should be cartilage, and instead it's got some bone, which means that A, that's probably why it preserved, but also then B, how does that change how it makes sound? And then C, did anyone others have it? And if they did, why haven't we found them? Because if they are ossified, we should probably find them more often. It all gets very complicated very quickly.
I mean, presumably, if it's ossified, it's making a really strong, loud noise rather than a lot of variation.
It can't vibrate, because the whole point is you're moving sound by vibrating. So you've still got to pass air in. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing.
Maybe it was just because sometimes you break bones and they on cartilage it ossifies, and that's the thing. So maybe it was a freak. We won't know, will we? Because that's the
or it damaged it. Some tendons can ossify when you put too much stress through them. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe it sang too loudly.
Well, there's a suggestion that some of the ankylosaurs were making a lot more noise than a lot of the others. So maybe this is an old age thing where it had stressed it and damaged it. I mean, I'm massively speculating, but that's the sort of thing it could be. So maybe it did show up only because it was a really old one that had overdone it.
It's who am I thinking of? It doesn't matter. I was going to try and reference pop music from 10 years ago. Kelly, no, not Kelly Clarkson. It doesn't matter. So the girl who sang "I Came in Like a Wrecking Ball," she's got a very gravelly. Miley Cyrus. She's got a very gravelly voice now, just speaking voice. She can still sing, but her vocal cords are like this. She's like, hey, and then she's like. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with dinosaurs. So well done, Izzy. Other than I exposed how old I am, I think in just that comments, just.
The fact you couldn't even remember her name.
I'm brilliant. I'm brilliant. Anyway, boys and girls, thank you so much for supporting our Patreon, our podcast, and everything. You are awesome. Thank you. Oh, I should put the ticker on. So you got the ticker. Obviously, go buy Dave's books.
I think they know by now.
No. Sometimes you'd be surprised. Also, check out us at the fire station in Oxford in May 25th.
25th. I think. Yeah.
Yes. I'm doing the thing. Actually, I could share it on the screen. I'm not going to share it on the screen, but I'll link to it and everything, obviously. So please do come to that. I think a few of you are already, so thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you. And if you want to buy my books, they've got nothing to do with dinosaurs, but they are historically accurate-ish. So enjoy that. Don't shake your head. They're good. They are. People like it. But yeah,
that's irrelevant to be criticising them.
Fair enough. Anyway, until next week, should we say rah? And you've got to actually say it and look in the camera and say it as well, because now people can see you. So 1, 2, 3. Rah. Perfect. Absolutely perfect.